Hello, boys and girls of Credit Union Land, and welcome to episode 69 of the CUInsight Experience. This episode is brought to you by our friends at PSCU. As the nation's premier payments CUSO, PSCU proudly supports the success of more than 1,500 credit unions. My name is Randy Smith. I'm one of the co-founders of CUInsight.com, and it is my job on the show to have conversations with the best and the brightest of the credit union community. I get to pick their brains and see if we can't find a few nuggets that we can all learn from. My guest on today's show is Bo McDonald. Bo is the president and CEO of Your Marketing Company, and Bo and I have known each other for over a decade. We lived in the same town while we were both building our respective companies in credit unions, so there were many lunches talking about the ups and downs of small business ownership. I know both Bo and I have had far more ups and feel grateful for the careers that we've had in being a part of this credit union community. This conversation was just a ton of fun for me to have. Bo and I have had a similar conversation many times. This time we just hit record and are sharing it with all of you. And we were both actually in Greenville at the same time, so we were able to record in person and then go share a delicious meal and a bottle of wine afterwards. So we talked about issues facing credit unions and what we all must be doing to stay relevant. We talked a lot about those powerful leadership lessons that he learned on the job, and they're touching the stove a time or two. And as always, we wrapped it up and had some fun with the rapid fire questions to wrap up the show. So without further ado, I give you my conversation with Bo McDonald. Enjoy. Bo, welcome to the show.
Good to be here, finally.
I know. I feel like I need to give a little background to our listeners. You and I have known each other
What kind of background are we talking about?
It's exactly it, right? No, we've known each other for quite some time, both of us with you building YMC and Dave and I building CUInsight. You're 12 years, I think you just passed, right? And we're
right about the same time?
Yeah, right. I mean, we're within a year of each other, but so we've known each other quite some time. We both were building these companies, and from our dining room tables that happened to only be a mile apart when we first started this thing. Now I'm up in Connecticut. You're spending more time in New Orleans, but we had a lot of these conversations. So
I see you more in the airport now than I see you anywhere else.
And that's the truth. We keep bumping into each other in the Sky Club in Atlanta. But I was really excited to have this conversation with you because I think it's going to be so much fun. And we're just basically you and I talking small business and leadership and life lessons and all those things. And like we have for so many years, but this time we're recording it and letting people listen. So I'd like to start with a broad question, that 30,000 foot level. You're working with credit unions from coast to coast. Is there a challenge or struggle that you're seeing all credit unions currently have?
Relevance. I think that's a big piece of it. There's been so many changes in credit unions, you could say over 10 or 20 years, but really even over the last 1 or 2 years. They started serving a certain group of people, segue into community charters. Some of them have kind of lost their way, and they realize we're a community charter now, but oh crap, we don't have the HR person sending us all of these people. Now we have to work for it. Who are we? Who are we serving? What are we doing? And I think that's the biggest issue facing a lot of credit unions right now is who are we and who do we serve?
So give the YMC pitch here. What are you doing to help in that sense of, at your marketing company, you go in, you're working with these credit unions. It sounds to me like we hear so much about disruption in, digital transformation and things like that. But it reminds me of when Rhonda Hotard from Louisiana Federal was on the podcast where she talked about they found their why of their credit union. That's what was ringing in my head as you were like, the relevance, who are we? So how do you guys work with the credit unions across the country?
She's right. It's so overused, but when you do it right, it's exactly what you need to do. Right now, a lot of credit unions call us and say, we need marketing help. And I realize you don't need marketing help. There's another reason why you're not growing members, you're not growing loans, you don't have a why. And Rhonda's exactly right. If you figure out who it is, who your ideal member is, and tweak your credit union to serve them well, figure out the member experience, what do they need, you can go a long way with that.
So let's take it kind of one step further and talk about, digital transformation and, disruption from fintech and all of that. Is there something that you think credit unions need to fundamentally change to keep the relevance that you're talking about?
I don't want to downplay it. What I'm about to say, people will say, That's crap.
Okay.
I don't think so. I think that's important. It's something you need to focus on. But some of our most successful credit unions have the worst technology. It's not great. It's not about the technology. They know who they are, they know who they serve, and they serve them well. If they had technology, they could be doing so much more. But in our office, we keep the list of our top 5 best performing credit unions and the bottom 5 least performing credit unions. And someone who was in that bottom 5 was in our office, one of our clients, and they said, how do I get from here to here?
Yeah.
What are these people doing that we're not? And I said, they have a why. They have an ideal member and they serve them well. When we say, who are you? They say, we serve people that need loans, which is so broad.
Right. It's funny you say that, like that ideal member. That's something Lauren's been talking about at CUInsight since she's come on, is like, what's the CUInsight ideal reader?
Right.
Like who consumes the information that we're putting out? What does that person look like, right? I've heard of other companies actually having a cutout of that perfect person, like, who there are. Is that something when you're working with credit unions, you help them define that perfect member or who they're going for?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of times they'll say, here's the sticky part. You get in a strategic planning session and I immediately know where it's going. They're going to describe either themselves, and we won't go there. We all know what a credit union board member looks like right now.
Right. Well, Jill's trying to change that.
Or I was going to say, that's the work that needs to be done. Or they describe a millennial. And as they describe the millennial, it sounds like they're describing an 18-year-old. They're about a decade behind. Somebody
just brought it up in the last couple of days that I was talking to. Millennials are turning 40.
Yes, right here.
The first one. So, yeah. Something I've been interested in because I've watched, I've had a kind of a front row seat watching you build your company. And it's changed over the years, it's with growth, but also direction. I even think like from the outside looking in, some of the credit unions that you're working with, when it comes to, being the leader of a company that has continued to grow and has had that success, do you consider YMC or yourself an innovator, a fast follower, combination of things? I know you even did an acquisition along the way. So
yeah, I used to want to be an innovator. I wanted to be at the front. We're a technology company, and that was false. I thought that. I didn't put my money where my mouth was, and I realized it's not who we want to be. There's enough of those out there. I take my own advice. When we tell a credit union, find your why, find your ideal member, we do the same thing. We have an ideal credit union. We've got a profile of these are the kind of people that we want to work with. So if you look at our marketing, if you look at our message, if you look at the way we present ourselves, it's not to not work with a bunch of people. It's to really appeal to those people that we want to work with. If someone else comes along, we're not going to kick them out if they want to work with us.
Yeah, sometimes we'll have to fire a client.
It's been done before. It's been done before.
I think that's an interesting thing, though, in talking about that change and like even finding your own why. Seems like that's a conversation you and I were having a ton about, where, maybe when you grow, sometimes you start to grow maybe not in the direction that you really should have been or wanted to. And I know that was a conversation Dave and I were having. We actually worked with Jill on it, but it's a conversation that you and I have had over the years too, about like, is this what we're supposed to be doing? Like getting back, like almost, I never like to say like it's reining it back in, but that idea of it's like focusing on this is what we do. This isn't what we do. And it's okay.
It was about 5 years ago we started growing, and I thought it was exciting.
Yep.
As a young entrepreneur, you start seeing the dollar signs come in, you get excited, you want to do more of it. We did more of it. And then I realized this isn't fun anymore. Just growing a business isn't fun. Finding clients we want to work with, that we can do meaningful work with, that appreciate what we do, that's fun. That's fun. Having a smaller group of clients that we enjoy working with, that enjoy working with us, and we can make a living doing that. That's pretty awesome.
Oh, that's fantastic. One of the things that I noticed, I think that I've seen in you the past couple of years is like, it seems to me that you're back on the road more actually in with the credit unions than for a while. Maybe it was managing more and things like that, where you're like, wait, no, that's the part I like, right?
Every year I've said, I'm not going to travel as much. And every time I say that, I end up getting another diamond medallion status with Delta again.
Where Delta loves us.
That's fun. I get to go in. I've taken more of a leadership role at YMC. We've got some really good young leaders leading our design team, our digital marketing team. And I've been able to spend more time at the office leading people instead of putting out fires and doing task stuff. but it's also allowed me more time to get into the credit unions and roll up my sleeves and have fun with them, asking, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And the cool thing is I'm like the grandparent. I can go in and sugar them up. And then one of my staff members, our relationship development leaders, they have to deal with it.
They're the ones who have to, we want what Bo said.
In fact, sometimes, maybe it glass or wine. One example, we were at a credit union in New Mexico, and I thought, well, this would be fun. Let's do a claymation video. And then our relationship development leader working with them, Haley, had to deal with it and figure out how are we going to do a claymation video. I don't know. It's easy. We'll find someone to do claymation.
You can find it. You're just throwing out ideas. That's
try to get our staff to do it, and they put their foot down on that.
Yeah, they're like, we don't know claymation. That's pretty hilarious. Last question in this first section. If we were to sit down a year from now, we're doing this again, having a cocktail, we're both actually in Greenville, South Carolina doing this. So if you broke out the crystal ball, what are you most proud of that you and your team at YMC accomplished over the next 12 months?
Our culture. That's been something in the works for the last 2 or 3 years. And at first I thought culture was just having a pizza party on a Friday. And I really started to learn that culture is treating employees like people and not machines. And the more I started doing that, the more I started learning empathy, and that's still, I'm probably at 5% of where I should be. Got another 95% to go. But just that little piece of it, working with our team and showing empathy, treating them like people, understanding them personally, and letting them fail sometimes, and letting them learn from it. We've got an awesome culture, and just again, with my 5% working there, we got so much more to do, and it's been cool to watch them grow through that.
I've noticed that in you over the past few years, that's something you've really, committed
I've mellowed
to.
a bit.
Yeah. My guess is your team would have to see that too. I remember when Leo Ardeen was on the podcast, and him talking about, one of the things I talked about with him was, and one of the reasons I wanted to have him on so early was this idea that, like, he says he's like a night and day different leader than he was, but he has people that worked with him the whole way through. And it's like, I remember asking him, did it take some people longer to go, oh, this is the new Leo, and not just expect what they maybe had when they started? And I guess I would pose that question to you with some of your longer term employees who maybe saw let's say, would a shorter fuse bow be
impatient. We use the DISC personality assessment at our office. And I'm a 98D. So if you know anything about DISC, you know what that means. I'm tasked, just get it done. And understanding that, I've tried to temper that a little bit. But going back to the staff, the team members that have been with me for a long time, one piece is watching them grow into better people, being able to lead them better. So the first part of it is actually hearing them say you're a different person. On the flip side, that short fuse bow, that one that wanted stuff done, if a client emails you, you've got 20 minutes to email them back. That's what I thought service was. And then when we found boundaries are a better thing for our good clients, so that our team has time to rest, they're not always putting out dumpster fires. I find that I have to go back and tell them it's okay if you don't answer that email in 20 minutes, if you answer it that afternoon, if it's not pressing, if a branch isn't on fire, there's not something that we have to deal with right now. Do what you're doing and do it well right now, and then come back to that. Acknowledge the email, but trying to undo in my team members all of that damage that I've done so long ago, it's still there.
It's interesting because I know I've grown and changed over the years as well. So, I've realized my limitations. That's why we have Lauren now as our CEO, because I am not a manager or, I'm the let's do a claymation video and then walk away. I'll drop those bombs in there. So that's awesome. I want to move on to the second part of the show, the leadership and life hacks, and talk to you about leadership in general. I think this is an area that you and I've talked a lot about personally. I know the story, but what inspired you to start your marketing company? What was the idea behind YMC 12 years ago?
It was kind of by accident. I had another marketing firm, and everyone knows what happened in 2008, 2009, lost a bunch of our clients. We had one credit union left. And that was the time when a lot of credit unions were going through the same struggle. And the CEO of that credit union that we've worked with since 2003, we still work with them today, started sharing us with some of their fellow CEOs. and it just kind of snowballed. But it's really cool because growing up, my father had been on the board of his credit union, a small hospital credit union in upstate New York. So I was kind of born into it, where he always said, if you use a credit union, son, that's what you do. So it was kind of instilled in me from a young age. So to see that and grow into a career in credit unions, you never know where you're going to end up.
Because when we met, you were also still doing radio, morning drive time and stuff. So.
I was a radio DJ here in South Carolina.
It's okay. Mike Bartu will kill me if I don't bring this up. Will you tell him what one of your radio names was? Actually,
there's like 18 of them.
Chris
P.
Bacon?
Yes.
I know. I told Bartu you were going to be on the show, and he's like, you have to bring up Crispy Bacon somehow.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
You got my bar tab at the next conference.
Do you know Jeff Olson was also a DJ? Radio disc jockey.
Really?
From the Dakota Leagues. Yep. That's what he did out of college. That's what he went. That was his dream job. First job.
I need to meet him. Change war stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I had told him about you too. So back to the original question. That was the inspiration to start YMC. How has that inspiration changed with time on the job over the past 12 years?
It's kind of the same iteration as what I talked about with credit unions, having to change. Back then it was just, we need clients. We got credit unions. And over the years, I've learned the clients we want to work with, the clients we don't want to work with. And I'm an old soul. You know that. I'm an 82-year-old trapped in this body. And I want to enjoy what I do. So we found those clients that have a mission. Mills 42 is a good example of that. Maple, down in Lafayette. Hope South, right here in Abbeville, South Carolina. They're also mission focused. They have clients that they serve. They make a huge difference in their community. The impact they make appreciates the fact that I can take a check from them every month, but I can put my head on the pillow and know that we've taken that check, but we're helping them with their mission. We're doing awesome work.
Yeah.
And I'll go back to the 5%. I can take about 5% credit for it because they're in it every day.
Absolutely.
Financial counseling, working with members. They're doing the important stuff. We're just helping them get the people there that they can help.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, there's so many credit unions out there doing amazing stuff. How would you describe your leadership style today?
Teacher.
Okay.
Before, I would say tyrant. Today, it takes having the right people. We haven't always had the right people.
Yeah.
But the team that we have today, they're young, they're teachable, they want to learn, they want to grow, and they appreciate the opportunity to fail. I don't have kids. I've never had kids, so I don't know what it's like. But if I were to be a parent, I would say it's got to be like that. Watching them put their hand on the hot stove and say, that's going to hurt. Yeah. If I save you from that, you're never going to learn. If I let you fail this time and we come back and talk about it, not only are you not going to do that again, you're going to be a better person on the other side.
More experience. There are so many things we have to learn just by doing it. It was interesting. It was, again, something that we've talked a lot about internally at CUInsight. It was also that, and I think you would probably share this, and I think you and I have actually talked about this. Some of the traits that made us successful as entrepreneurs to start a company don't make us, like, those traits don't work as well once it's a more established company, right? Like, it can't just be, and I think you see that across the board when you see like some of these tech companies and things like that, where it's just like, okay, the culture has to change once you've matured. Everybody's not going to work 90 hours a week, right? Like, that we were probably doing the first few years of building what we built. So
I think as any CEO, any business owner, any manager, I call it the accidental leader. You don't grow up thinking you're going to be in this position. And now you're in this position with other people's lives in your hands.
Their livelihoods. Yeah,
and you're only doing what you know. You had bad teachers. You had your parents, your grandparents, leaders, other bosses that have poured into you, and you're only leading like you've seen them lead. And if you've had crappy leaders your entire life, you're just doing what you know.
Or I even think, you and I both have spent a lot of time being our own boss. So it's kind of tough to know what a good leader is when you really maybe haven't even had one.
It is. I've got a friend that owns a plumbing company in Nashville.
Yeah.
And he's a great plumber. He was an awful leader. And we kind of went on this journey together.
Okay.
And he realized I could fix a toilet better than anyone else in Nashville. But when I had 5 employees, I was the worst boss ever. And that's one of the things that we had to learn. If we're going to have employees, we have to figure out how to find that human touch.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. As a leader, is there something that your team at YMC has heard you say so many times they can finish your sentence?
Oh, geez. I'm trying to figure out something appropriate to say. We talk a lot about failure. I thought failure was being weak. And now I look at it and we take risks. I've got a fairly new employee. He's been with us about a year. And I could tell that somewhere along the line, he had a leader that probably smacked his hand for everything that he did and never told him what he should do different, never let him, just made him kind of a skeleton of who he was. And it's been fun over the last year to say, go take a risk, go fail at something and come back and talk to me.
Yeah, to give people that space. You might have been at the conference too. It was years ago and I can't remember the person's name, which is terrible for the story, but it was that idea. It was a CUIs conference and whoever the keynote was like one of those great questions you can ask somebody is, what would you do?
Yes.
And even if it's not like exactly what you would do, it doesn't mean it's wrong, and like, I remember coming back going, oh my gosh, that's, like, instead of saying, like, if somebody comes to you with a problem, a question or whatever, like my instinct was like, this is the CUInsight way. This is how we do it.
You just answered my question for me. That's probably it. When they come to me, I say, well, tell me what you would do.
Yeah. That's such a powerful thing.
And the first time I say it to someone, they look at me like, well, that's what I'm asking you for.
You're the boss. So this is a question I added this season of the podcast because it was something that I was thinking about quite a bit. And like, I've watched you over time and other, friends of mine that are in leadership roles. But as a leader, we're always going to have to make a difficult decision every now and again. And sometimes it's one that's unpopular in the short term, but like you're doing it for the greater good. Is that something that you've always been able to do, or is that something you've cultivated in yourself?
Oh, geez, no. The first time I had to fire someone, I think I threw up 3 times and it's something that had to be done. But it's one of those difficult decisions because you don't want to do that.
It's never fun, right? But that's for sure. Is there a common myth about leadership or a good leader that you'd like to debunk?
Everyone looks at people like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk. That's the leader I want to be. And I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Like Steve Jobs was inspirational, but that culture of working 90 hours a week and tossing your family aside to go accomplish something. Granted, the work he did, would we have the iPhone if we didn't have someone with that kind of work ethic? So I always toss that back and forth in my head. What is a leader?
Yeah.
What is that myth? I don't know if it's Steve Jobs. I think everyone's got their own leadership style. You have to find it.
Yeah. When you look back to earlier in your career, was there a mistake that you made and maybe one that you see young leaders make often?
Trying to make a name for themselves.
Tell me more.
As a young leader, if you're ambitious, maybe you're the VP at a small credit union or, maybe you're even a teller at a credit union with aspirations to grow within the industry, making bold decisions just purely to make a name for yourself, it's going to bite you.
Okay.
I did a few of those things in radio, probably more so in radio when I was young, dumb, and didn't know any better. Trying to be the next Howard Stern. That it didn't end well. You give yourself a bad name, and the credit union industry is so small. You're 23 and you pull something like that. It's got to be remembered.
I think people often forget how small our industry is. There's no 7 degrees of separation. It's 1.
It's interesting having been in it now 12 years, which is short compared to some people, but just some of the folks that I see move around and they end up somewhere and you're like, I'm glad I didn't burn that bridge.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Right. That's for sure. Because who knows where they're going to be.
Absolutely.
We never leave. So it's just a question of which booth we're standing in or which credit union we're at next. Right. So has there been a piece of advice or a life lesson that you find that you receive that you find yourself going back to often?
One thing, I use this in strategic planning sessions. My elementary school art teacher.
Awesome.
Ann Greiner.
Wait, what was her name?
Ann Greiner.
Okay. I talked over you there, so we got to get shout out to Ann.
So she had this construction paper up on her wall, and I didn't understand it when I was in 4th grade, but in her fancy handwriting, it said, Kent never did a thing. Yeah. And that always kind of stuck with me. I'm like, what does that mean? It's like that mysterious thing. And growing into a leadership position, that's what I realized. You take risks. There's decisions you have to make, and everyone attributes this quote to Henry Ford, whether it's him or not. Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
You're right. Yep.
And
Todd Clark just recently on the podcast was talking about that they never succeeded or failed type of a comment too. But it was that similar where it's like, no, they didn't do anything. And I thought that was kind of stuck with me as well. But yeah.
Because that always comes up in our planning sessions. Can't never did a thing. You want to grow your credit union, you want to grow loans. There's always reasons why you can't. Find the one reason why you can.
Why you can, right? I like that. Well, another thing that I noticed in the first season was how many people had mentors in their life that they view as, important. Did you have a mentor, or do you have mentors that have helped you along the way with your career?
One bad one.
Okay.
And not in an awful way. When I was growing up in radio, I'd moved to the South Side for a little bit. I left the station one morning and I came back that afternoon. There's another guy sitting in the general manager's office. Kind of a peculiar old man. He had a playpen with 2 chihuahuas in it. I'm like, what's going on here? Where did Ron go? Well, I'm the new general manager. And I took to him because he's quirky. I like quirky people. I like to find their quirks. And he was one of those semi-abusive people, but he was so quirky. I'm like, I want to be like him.
Okay.
He drove a fancy car. He was quirky. He dressed well. I want to please him. I want to do things that make him happy. How can I go sell something and get praise? And that's what I thought a leader was.
Okay.
And when I started leading like that and people hated me and we had turnover and a dumpster fire for culture, I realized maybe I don't want to be like John. Let's find someone like
the mentor I needed, right? Yeah.
So, having gone through meeting a few folks, one businessman down in New Orleans, another in Nashville, I started seeing that compassion and empathy, and I saw their cultures. Unfortunately, the advice they gave me, I'm like, I could never do that. And it would be about 3 years. We talked about this before. Yeah. And I would end up finally having to take their advice if I wanted to get that result. I wish I had not waited so long to take their advice.
We seem to wait on things sometimes. I still remember one of those, and I've been talking a lot about this with Jill recently, and it was from somebody that we both know here in Greenville, Jeff Wasserman.
Yes.
Where he told me early on when we were building CUInsight, he was like, you need to hire somebody. And he's like, everybody waits 6 months too late to hire their first employee, right? And it was just like, oh no, we can't afford that right now, But that always like sticks in my head, and you see it when other people are building businesses too, where it's just like, okay, you need to take some stuff off your plate, but we wait 6 months.
That's funny. Scott Butterfield, when we were having dinner one night, this was a lot of years ago, actually. Yeah. He said, what should I do? I've got all these clients to do strategic planning sessions for. I said, you need to hire someone. And he did the same thing. He waited a little while, and then Allison came to work for him.
Absolutely.
And now he's like, I wish I had taken that advice when you gave it to me.
It's the same thing like you said with the mentors, like 3 years later, you're like, oh, that was okay. Yeah, no.
It's okay, Scott. I did the same thing.
Right. We all did it. So was there ever a point in your career where you felt lost or just kind of had self-doubt in what you were doing? And how did you work your way through that?
Yeah, a couple of years ago when we were growing fast.
Yeah.
And I started realizing I'm building this thing, and the money is cool, but this isn't what I want to be building. I'm not having fun anymore. And I felt lost. What do I do with this?
Yeah.
But then it comes back to the ego. If we scale smaller and have fewer clients and the balance sheet is smaller, am I a failure? Are people going to look at me like, oh, the business is down, huh? What are you doing over there?
Yeah.
And I had to get over that. I had to figure out that my happiness and enjoyment for doing what I do has to exceed just getting a paycheck.
Absolutely. Oh, no, that was something you and I talked a lot about. I think we're both struggling with things at the same time on that one. And like I said in the start of the show, there's been so many things in our careers where we've been tracking in the same area.
Right? Since we started about the same time, we always found ourselves going through the same problem right around the same time.
I have to throw this part out too, because it still cracks me up, is we knew each other on Twitter, and wasn't the first time we met in DC at a GAC or something like that. We knew each other on Twitter before we figured out that we lived less than a mile from each other.
We did, and then we started having lunch together.
Yeah, then it was like
at the Wild Wings that was about a half a mile from our houses.
Right. It was, yeah. So, and then we both ended up moving to Greenville. Now we're both all over the place. So, fun question for you, and it's really the second part of it that I think is the most fun. But like, what does the typical work day look like for Bo? And what's your perfect work day look like?
Oh, wow. Typical is probably flying through Terminal B in Atlanta, heading somewhere to go visit a client or go to a conference. I really enjoy being in the office.
Okay.
I love, when I'm in the office, I'm itching to get on the road. When I'm on the road, I'm itching to get back to the office. I love our team now. I love being able to spend the day there. We've got an awesome culture of people who, if we have to spend 8 or 9 hours a day together, those are the people that we want to spend that time with. And I just enjoy that. When I'm out of the office, I miss that camaraderie. I miss the lunches, the smack talk.
Awesome. Another question that's kind of newer to the podcast, but inside or outside of credit unions, has there ever been a time where you were just like, I crushed that? Like, it's like, if you think about it today, you still smile and you're like, I did good that day.
I think the first strategic planning session I did.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I knew I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
I nailed the process. I'd sat through so many that were just lacking.
Okay.
There wasn't anything that came out of it that you could go do. And if it was something like, we'll pave the parking lot. Okay. Well, that's not strategic. So I found the process that I wanted to do. And then I actually found someone who would pay me to do it.
Yep.
Like, I'm sweating bullets. This is make it or break it. Is this process that I came up with really going to do it? And at the end of it, when the board said, this is the best strategic planning session we'd ever done, I'm like, what do you mean? What? This is my first, no, I've been doing this forever.
I've been doing it forever, but yeah. See.
But that was really cool. And to be able to go and of course there were some things I learned from it and take that over the last few years, but that was one of those feelings that I could have left and just ripped my shirt and chugged a glass of wine.
It felt like Superman. Before we move on to the last part of the show, if you have a free day, nothing on the calendar, I know that's rare for you, but what passions do you have outside of credit unions? What do you do to unwind?
Wow, I've gotten so old. The answers to that. Totally different than they would have been 10 years ago. I've gotten into reading. We started a book club at YMC last year. I would buy all these books and then I would never read them. So I enjoy the opportunities to sit down with a glass of wine and read a book.
Do you know the Japanese have a word for that? Sundoku?
Sudoku?
No, sundoku is the Japanese word for buying books that you intend to read. And
then never read them.
Not ever reading them, like the stacks of books.
I call that Amazon Prime.
Oh my goodness, but there was also an article out there and I showed it to Jill because I was like, look, because we tend to buy books also that we're trying to make our way through. And there was an article that it says that you're actually smarter just by having the books because it gives you something to think that you're going to do. So,
I am one of the smartest people you'll ever meet then.
Just keep building that library. That's it. So reading, what else? I know you're a music guy. So
you'll laugh at this. You've laughed at this before. Roller skating. I still try to get out on the hardwood floor every once in a while.
I've been looking for a video of you roller skating from like your teen years. Since
you'll never find it.
I know.
I was cleaning out my mother's house about a month ago when I went back to New York and I found all these pictures from the roller skating rink.
Every time I met your dad, I asked him to bring me one, but he just wouldn't do it.
And I've locked them away.
They're locked away.
Right along with the first air check of the first time I was ever on the air.
Oh, that's awesome.
That'll never see the light of day.
You found that too, though. You were young, though, right?
It was awful.
But you were a young teenager, right?
I was 16.
Yeah. I remember you telling me that story.
That was the worst decision that program director probably ever made, letting me on the air.
At 16. That's pretty awesome, though. I'd like to move on to the last part of the show, then just have a little fun with the rapid fire questions. The questions are rapid. Your answers do not have to be. What were you like in high school? And do you remember the first time you got in memorable trouble?
I was a geek in high school. I was never really a part of any one of the crowds. I kind of hung out with a little bit of everyone.
Okay.
First time I got in trouble, I was a pretty good kid.
Yeah.
Get my father on the phone. I'm sure he can.
Well, we'll have to ask him the next time he's down. Most of us stumbled into a career in credit unions in one way or the other. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
In 5th grade, I wanted to be a bus driver.
Okay.
High aspirations.
Right. Yep.
And then I wanted to be a radio DJ.
Okay.
And a lot of people want to do that and they never get to achieve it. I was lucky that for 10 years, I got to live the life of being I use the term celebrity very loosely.
Hey, I would listen to Bo and Lauren in the morning. So
those were good times.
When I first moved to South Carolina. Do you have any daily routines that if you don't do, your day just feels off?
I've started exercising in the morning. I don't even go to the gym. Just starting the morning with just working out, that and coffee.
Okay.
That gets me going for the day.
What kind of workout? Like, are you doing it at home or?
Yeah, just no weights, just crunches, just simple mobility stuff so that I don't feel like a sloth the rest of the day.
I should try doing that. I was interested to ask you this question, and I thought it might be a tough one for you to answer because I know your love of music, but the random question, what's the best album of all time, the one you can listen to without skipping a song?
Oh, geez. Best album ever. Elton John, Greatest Hits. I'm going to have to go with that. That's generic, but there's so many.
That's a good one. I don't think anybody said Elton John on the show yet, but to tell you the truth, that's a good add.
That or Captain and Tennille, one of the two. Don't judge.
You are 80.
So, we got to keep moving. I've got to get my foot bath.
As we just mentioned when we were talking about you talking about books and stacking up books, is there a book that either you've gifted to others or that you recommend that you just think everybody should read?
Yeah, there's two of them. One that anyone who's going to be a leader on our team, and we're actually going through it right now with our leaders in training. It's called Ego is the Enemy.
Okay.
And I don't remember the author of that.
We'll look that up and link to it.
Ego is the Enemy. It really talks about what is a good leader when you let ego get in the way, and it gives great examples all through history of leaders who have led because they want title.
Yep.
And it also talks about their downfalls. And then those leaders that you've probably never heard their name before, but they did some great stuff because they just led their team.
Yeah.
They didn't care who got the credit for it. They didn't care if their name was on it. They were just good leaders that did great work.
What was the other book? You said two.
The other one. So the second one I just recently wrote about on CUInsight. It's called David and Goliath.
Okay.
And I love that. It's so applicable to credit unions because it talks about credit unions it talks nothing about credit unions, but when you apply it to that, you look at these huge companies like big banks, big organizations, and you think, I could never beat them. And they share this story of David and Goliath, and they give the scientific evidence for why Goliath was able to be beaten. It's not just this story or tale that you read, but the scientific evidence for why David was able to beat Goliath is the same reason that leaders of small organizations shouldn't look at those big companies and say, I could never beat them.
Yeah.
The things that made Goliath large and scary were the medical conditions that were actually able to have him taken down.
Yeah.
So when we look at the big organizations, a lot of times we see our small little CUInsight or our small little your marketing company or a small little credit union. We think we could never compete with them. If you find their weakness and you find your strength, you never did a thing.
Never did a thing. As you've gotten older, what's become more important to you? And my favorite part of this question, what's become less important?
More important is time. I used to work all the time.
Number one answer.
and I've realized I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. And there's so much, I see your travels and I'm kind of envious of that. There's so much of this world to see. There's so many things to do, even if you don't leave this country.
Yeah.
There's just so much to enjoy. There's music, there's food, there's culture. And I want to experience as much of that as I can before I can't.
Yeah. What's become less important?
Money.
Yeah.
I used to think I need to retire comfortable and that's still important.
Yeah.
But you just hoard stuff and both of those really go together. I found I have all these resources, but I have zero time to enjoy it.
We are fortunate that can be the case, right? Like that. It's
so, and I feel fortunate for me to say, I've got all these resources and say, I wish I had less of it.
Because I know both of us grew up in similar backgrounds and things like that. And we've
dirt poor
achieved more than, we kind of expected. So I'm with you on it. I share your answer there. There's a question I don't send in advance here. When you hear the word success, who's the first person that comes to mind?
Oh, wow. Besides you, of course. So I got to buy me some extra placement here on CUInsight.
Extra community article.
I would look inside the industry and I would say Lois Kitch.
Tell me more.
Lois is always someone that I looked up to. The work that she does, I think I could never do what she did because I'm afraid. I'm fearful. We were talking about that right before we did the podcast. And I see the work that she's done and she's just a badass.
Yeah.
And I had never met her up until last year was at the CU Prodigy conference.
Okay.
And all of a sudden Lois sits next to me and I start geeking out like a fanboy. I'm like, oh my God, Lois is sitting next to me. Lois is sitting next to me. And we sat and talked until the wee hours of the morning. And it just confirmed that she's just the real deal. Like the work that she's willing to do, the things that she's willing to do to follow her passion. I wish I could be half the person that she is for what she does.
When I was in Kenya with her last year, at one point I looked over to Jim Morrell and I said to him, like, because of the way that all the African DEs there look at her, like they have her on a pedestal type of thing. I'm like, only Lois would retire after building all the DEs in the U.S. to then take on a new continent,
yes.
In retirement. And, her and George are responsible for that program over there as well. So it's amazing. So, thanks again, Bo, for taking the time today. This has been a blast, which I knew it would be because we've had so many of these conversations. My last question for you, do you have any final asks of our listeners or final thoughts?
Evaluate your leadership. I wish I was the leader today that I was 10 years ago, because I think of some of the good people that have come through YMC that have left because of me.
Okay.
And I hope 10 years from now, I can say the same thing, that I wish I was a better leader 10 years ago. And I see so much young talent in credit unions that just, they're being stifled. And even older talent. You have people who are leading the only way that they know, and it's not always the best. Think about your people. Think about really what's important. Is it really important to beat the credit union next to you and get that loan growth? Or is it important to take care of your team that's going to take care of your members?
Absolutely. That's a perfect way to wrap up. We will link to everything we talked about today in the show notes. What's the best way for people to...
Except those pictures of me roller skating.
Oh, I wish I could get your dad to send those. What's the best way for people to reach out to you if they have additional questions? LinkedIn, the Twitter machine, email?
LinkedIn, of course. I'm always on Twitter at YMCBo.
Awesome. We will link to all the ways to contact Bo as well. Thank you again, Bo, for doing this, and I hope you have a great day.
It's been fun. Thanks, Randy.
Before we go, I would like to thank all of you for listening. And once again, thank Bo for taking the time out of his busy schedule. We probably could have done this episode sooner if we chose to record it at Terminal B Sky Lounge in the ATL. But a big thank you, again, for him taking time out of his day in Greenville today. And then also a huge thank you to our sponsor, PSCU. Make sure to click on the link in the show notes and give them some love, see everything they have going on. One last thing, we're on all the podcast players out there: Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. Pick your poison. We would greatly appreciate if you'd subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating, maybe even a review on the old Apple podcast machine. It helps with the visibility of the show and us spreading the credit union love that we so enjoy doing. If you don't think we're worth the 5 stars, forget that I asked, and just reach out to me directly and let me know where we can improve. And actually, one more last thing here. Don't forget about the CUInsight Experience podcast book list. Get your next book recommendation delivered from Amazon, from the guests on our show. Thank you all again for listening. Have a great day.